it was a real thrill. I mean, I read the book when I was at drama school 30 years ago when it came out. So when I read it, it was the first thing I'd ever read that Neil was involved with. And through reading that got me into reading the Sandman comics and then pretty much everything Neil had done. So I became a huge fan. So then when many years later we became friends, we met up and we became friends, that was just a huge thrill. So to be part of the kind of genesis of this becoming a TV series was, so exciting for me. But also, when it came to it and we came to actually making it, the responsibility of bringing this to life on screen, I felt even more the weight of it, because I was one of those fans who was like, don't mess this up. So it made a huge difference having Neil there every day at the heart of every choice as showrunner. And I'm not sure how we could have done it without Neil being in the middle of it all. It'd be very difficult to do that.
I was very aware when I first read the script and then the novel as well that there's such a unique voice to the way that Neil and Terry wrote together, to everything that Neil does and everything that Terry does separately as well. Their worldview is so. That's why they have such devoted fan bases, because they write unlike anyone else, and that was always going to be the trick, managing to keep that oddness, that otherness, that idiosyncrasy, and transition it from the novel to the script to the screen, and keep it recognisably different. I think that's why probably Neil had to adapt it. I think anyone else would just have logically have normalised it, have made it saner, and that hasn't happened. It's got all that sort of fizz and pop and oddness and brilliance and humour, and I think we've been enormously lucky.
So it began for me with Michael Sheen. I have known Michael forever, or at least a decade. I was sending Michael early drafts of the scripts to look at. And when I finished writing it, I decided that I wanted Michael to play Aziraphale. And Michael and I had an incredibly awkward dinner because he thought I was going to ask him to play Crowley, and he'd read the scripts and didn't want to. And we got to the end of the dinner and I'm like, well, are you... And I had to say, I don't want you to be Crowley. And he said, but I don't want to be Crowley. And it all got a lot less difficult at that point. And he said yes. And I only had one actor in mind for Crowley, who was my person I wanted him to be, which was David Tennant. I decided I wanted him halfway through writing episode 3. And then I had to persuade Amazon to let me have David. And it took about a month with them sort of pushing back and saying no, and eventually I phoned up and I said, you have to say yes, because I don't have anybody else and we're going to have to start shooting, so you have to say yes. And they said yes. And then all of the people who said yes were like, oh my God, he's perfect. It's like, yes, I told you.
I think the good thing was that we had Neil doing the adaptation, so he was obviously very comfortable and very familiar with the world and the material, even though he co-wrote it with Terry. But he knew what he was doing, and so I think that part of it was very helpful for him to say, okay, well, here's what we were going to do with this guy, maybe anyway, and having a really good sense of what to do once they got to the part where they actually had to bring me in, and so. It was fairly seamless for me. I felt very much a part of the world. I didn't feel like I was plugged in any weird way or inorganic way. It just felt like another kind of part of that side of the world.
I think Anathema, she's a descendant, has kind of gone through, lives by the rules of her ancestors and always wants to do as she's told. And I think the big question at the end of it is she going to start living her life as she wants to, or is she going to continue with the constructs that are being passed down to us? And I think it's a beautiful question that I think any human being should ask themselves, what constructs are being passed down to you, and the world's ever changing, so should you change and mold them?
Sure. I think I remember that section. It's really funny. There's one thing I recall is they accuse Crowley, the demon, of designing a certain loop of expressway around London, and that's the epitome of hell on earth. And not only does it provide all this misery for the people driving upon it, but what they don't realize is it's in some sort of like eldritch black magic letter shape. So while it's like water on a prayer wheel. So while they drive, they're actually like creating worshipful energy for the Dark Lord himself. Yeah, I mean, hell and heaven are human constructs, and so it only stands to reason that we are capable of creating hell on earth, but arguably heaven as well.
Yeah, I think when you cast a show like Good Omens, when you settle on the right people, when you see it working, see the chemistry, the remarkable chemistry between David and Michael, it's like nobody else could have done it. I mean, I'd worked with David before on Doctor Who, but I hadn't worked with Michael before. But as soon as I started to see them working together, it was like they were doing a dance around each other. And it's almost like they were one character, which is interesting because when Terry and Neil originally started the book, they were one character and they split the character in half. So maybe the whole story is about them trying to get back together again.